Good evening. This is Pamela, and you're listening to Watchmen on the Pod. We are going to continue in our new book reading today, Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Okay. The anti-Catholic agitation that is now so rife in the United States marks a crisis in our history. Hundreds of intelligent, patriotic, conscientious men are earnestly, laboriously, and courageously devoting themselves to this agitation. Newspapers have sprung up all over the country to give warning of danger and to arouse the spirit of American patriotism. Societies are being organized all over the land to protect and defend American institutions against the aggressions and encroachments of a foreign political power that has gotten a lodgment in this land of liberty, and that is evidently bent on the destruction of our free institutions and substituting them for the papal despotism, a despotism that lords it over the minds, and the consciences, and the actions of its subjects, and thus renders them incapable of loyalty to any other government. What does it all mean? It is evident that a crisis is even now upon us, a crisis in which the world-old contest between freedom and despotism is to be definitely and finally settled. This is an old fight. The cause of liberty seemed to have achieved the victory when our forefathers achieved their independence through a successful revolution and founded our government on principles for the first time formally announced in our Declaration of Independence, securing to our people natural rights of man, freedom of the mind and conscience, freedom of worship and freedom of speech and of action, and protection in the exercise of these rights. Here in the wilds of a newly discovered world was established a well-considered, well-understood, and truly democratic government, a government of people, by the people, for the people. The tree of liberty was here planted in a fertile soil and congenial clime, and has become a well-rooted, vigorous, and fruitful tree of goodly stature. Its branches overshadow the land, and its fruit is pleasant to taste. The question now is, shall it be plucked up by the roots and burned in the fire? To this question, more than 12 million of American freemen, for themselves, their wives, and their children, and in behalf of humanity, return in the most emphatic manner the answer, never, and stand ready, if need be, to seal that answer with their blood. The fruit of the tree of liberty is so sweet to the taste, so refreshing, and so invigorating that we are ready to say with Patrick Henry, "Give me liberty, or give me death." It is because of a conviction that our government is threatened by a wily and formidable foe, the cause of human liberty is in danger, that we are in the midst of this anti-Catholic agitation. Is all this imaginary, or is there real danger hanging over us like a cloud? Is the Roman Catholic Church the friend or the foe of liberty? Is it a branch of the Church of Christ in common with the various Protestant denominations, laboring in common with them for the establishment of Christ's kingdom on earth? If we answer this question in the light of history, in the light of present experience, in the light of the monstrous claims of the Pope, and in light of the spirit by which it is everywhere and always animated, in the light of its present efforts in our country and in all lands, we must say that it does not, in any degree, bear the marks of a Church of Christ. It is, in fact, only a compact, well-organized, and powerful political machine wielded in the interest of the greatest despotism that has ever cursed the earth. If any man have not Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. And if this organization has not the Spirit of Christ, it is not a Church of Christ. That it is not animated by the Christ Spirit is clearly manifest. It has never manifested the Spirit of Christ in all of its past history, and so is not a Christian church at all, as it has always been grasping after temporal power and civil domination, and is now, as it always has been, laboring for civil supremacy over all the world. We are surely warranted in calling it a huge and dangerous political machine that has stolen the livery of heaven to enable it the more effectually to serve the devil, and the more easily to deceive and enslave mankind. But our but are our institutions in danger from this foe? Have we any cause for alarm? Is it necessary that we should sound the trumpet throughout the length and breadth of our land, and muster the host of freedom for the conflict? Yes, my fellow countrymen, there is cause for alarm. There is real danger in the immediate situation. Forewarned, forearmed, and we have not begun a moment too soon. Organized for the protection of the American institutions. Every citizen and every sojourner in this country who is loyal to the Roman Catholic Church is an enemy to our government of necessity, for he yields his highest allegiance to the Pope of Rome, a foreign potentate who has time and again anathematized, I can't say the word, every fundamental principle of our government. He has denounced liberty of conscience, freedom of speech and of press, freedom of worship and of teaching as pestilent and damnable heresies, destructive to order and to the peace and welfare of society. The highest dignitaries of this so-called church have declared their purpose to make this a Roman Catholic country. What to do this But to do this, it must be brought to the acceptance of the Pope of Rome as Christ's vicegerent or representative on earth, invested with all temporal and spiritual authority above all kings, emperors, and civil rulers, the supreme judge and lawgiver, whose decisions are infallible and final. This would make him Lord of the conscience and master of actions of all men throughout his dominion, which is nothing less than the whole earth. These are his monstrous claims, and his priests of all grades, including the wily Jesuits, are laboring night and day to make them good in this land of ours. Has not the beast of prophecy indeed followed the woman into the wilderness to destroy her children, whose name is Liberty? It is but a few years since Archbishop Ireland, who poses as a Republican and as a friend of our government, who so busied himself in our late presidential election, and who since the election has had the ear of the president and busies himself in trying to control his most important appointments in the interest of his church, declared that this country was to be brought under the Pope within the next 20 years. Let things go on for 20 years more as they have been going for the last 50, and this will not appear to have been an unwarranted prophecy. It is evident that Rome is in politics and is ceaselessly on the alert in the United States to so control the political action of our people that whatever party may succeed to power, she may be in the saddle to augment her wealth and power. The people are asleep and must be awakened and made to realize the danger, or our ship of state will be scuttled and sunk. Is there no danger when the Roman hierarchy quarters its wily agents in the capital of our nation to exert their influence in shaping our laws and in controlling presidential appointments to the highest and most important offices? Is there not danger when all our politicians who aspire to national fame feel that in order to succeed they must truckle to Rome and be submissive? Is there not danger when the capital of our nation is a wily Jesuit and Washington is literally in the lap of Rome? Go into any and all of the departments of our government and find 7/11 of the government employees, in several of them abject slaves of the Pope, and tell me there is no danger. Go into all our cities and larger towns and find our municipal governments in the hands of the faithful servants of their foreign despot, the Pope, and who are corruptly administering their affairs to enrich the church at the expense of the people. Tell me, is there no danger? contemplate this alien and dangerous power in complete control of 3/4 of our newspapers and periodicals and tell me, is there no danger? Look at this alien organization levying tribute continually on Protestant businessmen all over the land and growing rich on tribute, thus levied, secured through fear of the boycott, and then tell me, if you can, there is no danger. Look at the Protestant pulpit, for the most part muzzled and dumb through fear of the boycott against their members who are engaged in business and on whom they largely depend on their salaries. And then tell me, if you can, there is no danger. It is clear that Rome is rapidly getting control of all the sources of power in the United States, both in civil and military affairs, that she is doing so in pursuance of well-considered and wisely laid plan, and for the very purpose of subverting our government. Let us go back a little and review the means suggested and considered for bringing the United States under the control of the papacy. Father Chinaquai, in his book 50 Years in the Church of Rome, gives an extended and minute account of the plans that were discussed by bishops and priests for the attainment of political control of the United States and for the overthrow of our government. About 50 years ago, a council of bishops and priests was assembled at Buffalo, New York, for the purpose of determining this question. Now, if you don't know, I did read the book out loud, 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chinaquai. It is on YouTube and also at the website of watchmanonthepod.com. Here we go. The Bishop of Chicago thought to accomplish the desired end by colonizing immigrants from Canada, France, and Belgium in such numbers in the valley of the Mississippi as would give to the Roman Catholic Church political control of the states of Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Iowa. It was thought that with the fast hold the church had gained in the southern states, as also in Michigan and Wisconsin, that it would thus be able to hold a cordon of states extending from Florida along the Gulf of Mexico and up Mississippi to our northern limits, and thus in time give it complete political control of the United States. Father Chinaquai had been engaged in this scheme by the Bishop of Chicago and had entered upon the work as an immigration agent with enthusiasm and was meeting with encouraging success. This plan of operation was being advocated earnestly by Dupre McGee, the editor at that time of the Freeman's Journal. Promising as it appears to its advocates, it was repudiated at a large majority of the members of the Buffalo Conference. They argued that by this plan their forces would be scattered and the power of the church dissipated, and that the true policy of the church for getting political control of the country was to concentrate its forces in the cities and larger towns, fill these up as rapidly as possible with their foreign immigrants. It was argued in this way, the Roman Catholic vote would be so wielded under the direction of the bishops and priests as to be made a balance of power vote between the two political parties, and so necessary to the success of either, and being so, it could make its own terms with the political party leaders, and thus get the control of the municipal offices in a very short time, and that it would, in a few years, become a majority vote, when it would have complete control in municipal governments and ultimately in state politics. This plan had been carefully thought out and matured by Jesuits. Its wisdom was made so apparent by their arguments in this conference that the plan of the Bishop of Chicago and his adherents received a very emphatic condemnation by the Buffalo Conference, and the wise plan of the Jesuits was adopted and at once entered upon as the true policy of the Church for getting political control of our government. The wisdom of this plan is seen in its results. A half-century has elapsed since its adoption. The work of bringing Roman Catholic immigrants into our country and colonizing them in our cities has been sedulously pursued from that day to this, and the results predicted by the most sanguine of its advocates have been realized. Quietly, stealthily, steadfastly has this plan been pursued under the direction of the most astute political managers that the world has ever seen, until the realization of its purpose seems to be almost within our grasp. And what was its avowed purpose? Political control of our country was its immediate purpose, but this control was to be used for the overthrow of our government. The Roman Catholic priesthood in former years was wont to protest loudly that it took no part in politics, but confined itself to the spiritual interests of mankind. But in all this history of its doings, it is made manifest that the purpose of this gratuitous protestations was to lull us to sleep, to keep hidden from our eyes its evil intent upon our civil and religious liberties. Having secured the foothold that it has, its attitude is now changed, and it seems desirous to be known as a powerful factor in our political affairs, and to exhibit itself as a holding a club over political aspirants. Hence, it boasts openly, made of late, that it has made and unmade presidents. It still works in secret and in the dark. Emboldened by its success, it is beginning, upon occasion, to show its hand in the open light of day. The eyes of the people are beginning to be opened to the danger, as witness this present anti-Catholic agitation. There are still greater signs of approaching danger that many have been above noticed. What is the rational significance of the fact that young men of the so-called church are being organized into military companies and regularly drilled in the manual of arms and in tactics? What does it mean that a systematic process of procuring arms and ammunitions is being put into operation? What does it mean that the basements of churches, cathedrals, and school buildings are being converted into arsenals in which to store away arms and munitions of war? Does it not indicate a purpose, if need be, in the struggle of supremacy to resort to revolution and bloodshed? Is it a mere happen so that the rank and file in the army of the United States is made up very largely of the subjects of this foreign potentate, the Pope of Rome? Men who from their childhood have been taught implicit obedience to his authority as the price of the salvation of their souls, and who, in a conflict authority between the Pope and the government of the United States, would without hesitation yield allegiance to the Pope. It is not a fact worthy of some thought that a very undue proportion of the field and line officers in our arms are members of this church, and that the same state of things is found in our Navy? Is it not a fact that demands our attention that a largely undue proportion of cadets in our military schools are members by birth, baptism, and confirmation of the Roman Catholic Church? Do not these significant and important facts clearly indicate that there is an unseen power holding watch and guard over and controlling these things? It was the same unseen power that recently secured promotion of Colonel Appinger to a brigadier generalship over the heads of about 20 brave officers of American birth, who stood above him on the roster for promotion, and whose military records were as good as his. Who was this Colonel Coppinger? An Irish adventurer who commenced his military career in the army of the Pope, where he spent a year in fighting against the freedom of Italy from the grasp of the papacy. He then came to the United States in the early part of our Civil War, and very soon after his arrival at New York was able to command sufficient influence to get him a commission in the line of a New York regiment. He served on the side of the Union, such distinction as to win promotion in the volunteer service and to secure a place on the roster of the regular army at its reorganization at the close of the war, where, at the time of this last promotion, he held a colonel's commission. His military record was good, his personal record was despicable. He was able, however, to secure such influences in his favor to cause President Cleveland to promote him over 20 colonels whose military records were as good as his, and whose personal records were unblemished, and whose only fault was that they were Americans and Protestants. His confirmation was opposed actively in the Senate, but the Jesuits triumphed, and he was confirmed. There is a great effort now being made by the hierarchy to secure a concession from the War Department to build a Roman Catholic church on the military reservation at West Point. The purpose of this reservation was the establishment of a national military school for the education of officers of the Army of the United States. It is entirely under the ownership and control of the government, and so knows nothing of sex in sex. It's SECTS in religion. Being a Christian government, it provides a chapel and a chaplain for the use of service of this great national military school. But this does not satisfy the ambition designs of Rome. She seeks to be so far recognized by the government as to be permitted to build a chapel for the exclusive use of the Roman Catholics. The contention which has sprung up over this question, it has been stated by the representatives of the hierarchy as an argument in favor of the concession which it seeks. 2/3 of the enlisted men on duty at West Point, and 5 of the officers there in command, and the family of a 6th are members of the Roman Catholic Church. The only use I now intend to make of this reference is simply to ask the question, how does it come about that Rome has gotten such a hold in our army? It is a purely accidental thing that 5 of the officers and 2/3 of the enlisted men on duty at this military school of the United States government are Roman Catholics. And why does this so-called church alone so anxiously seek this concession? Does it not from all this plainly appear that Rome is laboring to Romanize our army? For what purpose? Let us ask ourselves, does she need a military control that she is so anxiously and cunningly seeking and obtaining? Could we safely commit our institutions to the keeping of a hostile army, or a soldiery under the control of a despotism that is obviously laying its wires to destroy our civil institutions? In view of Rome's disloyalty in our late Civil War, can we trust her? Is this a Roman Catholic country? In view of the facts above recited, is there not good grounds for the conclusion that the wily Jesuits are secretly watching and ceaselessly working to get hold of all the sources of political power in the United States, as also that which we must ultimately rely for defense of our institutions, our army and navy? Is it not time that the American people should have their attention called to these things and to their significance? It is the mission of the Christian Church to publish the gospel of life and salvation through the blood of the everlasting covenant to a lost and ruined world, to seek and to save lost, to usher in the era of love and peace and joy throughout the world. Its mission is to be accomplished through the power of the truth applied to the minds and consciences of men by the Holy Spirit. It has no use for carnal weapons in the prosecution of its work. Its only legitimate weapon is the Word of God, which is the sword of the Spirit. An organization that is always and everywhere grasping after wealth and power, using and preparing to use carnal weapons, not even hesitating at war and bloodshed, whose aim and effort is to enslave the minds, consciences, bodies, and souls of men, fostering the most monstrous and wicked superstitions, that it may fill its coffers with gold, that withholds from its members the word of God, and that puts the decisions and decrees of popes and church councils in the place of the scriptures of divine truth, as the rule of life, surely cannot be recognized as a Christian church. No, it is simply a political machine for the enslavement of mankind. It is a monstrous despotism relying on ignorance and its natural offspring, superstition, for its support. It is not a religion that we are called upon to fight, but a corrupt and most dangerous political organization whose purpose is nothing short of the destruction of our government. Whatever may be as a religion does not concern our present contention. Every true American citizen believes in securing to every man freedom of mind and conscience in the matter of religion, and will ever stand ready to protect him in his right to worship God according to the dictates of his conscience. We do not inquire into the truth or the falsity of his religion. We accord to him the right to determine this for himself and be answerable only to God. It is not its religion that we call into question when we arraign the Roman Catholic Church. We only fight it in its political aspirations and because it is the desperate and deadly foe to civil liberty. It is, moreover, an active and aggressive foe, a foe that can never be conciliated, never trusted, for when it professes friendship for our institutions, its only purpose is to throw us off our guard, that it may the more surely undermine and destroy them. We know that should it ever gain political control in our land, it would deprive us of the rights that we now accord. It is an organized despotism, the sworn and implacable foe of liberty. It hates the symbol of the policy, power, and authority of our government and the flag of our country and places it over the papal rag. It gives to the highest officer of our government, the President of the United States, the second place at its festal board, reserving the place of honor to the allegate the Pope. This insult it has recently perpetuated upon us as the open light of day, and in the most conspicuous and offensive manner, an insult that causes the blood of every American patriot to tingle with resentment. It is but too evident that no matter what may be its profession, it is at heart disloyal to our government and only loyal to the Pope of Rome. This alien power is the implacable foe of popular education and is constantly laboring for the destruction of our system of free schools. Her real motive for this opposition lies in the fact that the mental training which her children would get in our free schools would unfit them for being loyal, obedient, and servile children of the Church. Here they would be trained to think, to reason, and to investigate, to take nothing on trust, but to form their opinion upon all subjects from convictions resulting from a free and rational investigation. The whole atmosphere of the free school and all of its associations would beget in them a love of liberty. This system of education is the exact counterpart of the system of the parochial schools and is destructive to that blind faith and servile obedience that give to Roman Catholic Church its power. Our free school system tends to make its beneficiaries good, intelligent, loyal American citizens, while the parochial schools only aim to make their pupils to be loyal subjects of the papacy. Under the protection of our flag, they are raising up a force to be used for the destruction of our government. In this contention over the question of education, Rome is continually making efforts to unite the Church and the state, securing the aid of the state in supporting her schools, as also of what she calls her charitable institutions. By thus attacking the fundamental principles of our government at every point, she makes manifest her disloyalty and her purpose to undermine and overthrow our institutions. Our civil and religious institutions had their origin in the protests of Luther and his coadjutors against the despotism and corruption of the Roman Catholic Church. That brought about the Reformation of the 16th century. Against this Reformation she has never ceased to fight and never will until her power shall have been overthrown. She has always been the sworn enemy of our Protestant institution and is today, as she has ever been, bent on their destruction. She has never lost an opportunity to give a stab in the dark. In our dissensions over the question of slavery, she thought she saw a chance to destroy our government, and taking the side of slavery, used her whole influence in the South to stimulate and encourage secession and rebellion in the North to discredit and weaken the cause of the Union. It was G.T. Beauregard, a rabid Roman Catholic, who first fired on the flag of our country at Fort Sumner and let loose the dogs of war. It was the Pope of Rome, and he alone of all the European potentates, that gave his recognition and his blessing to the Confederate government, and by the very terms of his kind letter to its president made it manifest that he expected through this kind offices to secure its recognition of his claims and win it for Church. Wow. It was the Pope of Rome and his faithful lieutenant Louis Napoleon who, taking advantage of our civil war, undertook to establish a Roman Catholic empire in Mexico. For this purpose sent Maximilian, a Roman Catholic prince, under the protection of a French army to usurp dominion and take possession of the country. All of this was done in the hope that the Union cause would be lost and that through the strife that she had fomented, two Roman Catholic empires would be established on the American continent. Visualize that of Mexico under Maximilian and that of the Confederacy under Jefferson Davis, thus making it possible to make a conquest of the entire continent. This letter of the Pope to Jefferson Davis, couched in some such courteous and loving terms, and showing so clearly that his sympathy was with the Southern cause, was well understood by his loyal and faithful subjects all over the North. Roman Catholic officers began to resign, and the rank and file began to desert from the time of the publication of that letter in 1863 to the close of the war. In reply to the boast so freely made by Roman Catholic editors and orators that the Irish fought the battles of the Civil War and saved the nation, the following document received from the Pension Department at Washington is here given. Whole number of troop, 2,128,200. Natives of the United States, 1,627,267. Germans, 189,817. Irishmen, 144,221. British, other than Irish, 90,040. Other foreigners and missions, 87,855. The desertions were as followed. Natives of the United States, 5%. Germans, 10%. Irish Catholics, 72%. British, other than Irish, 7%. Other foreigners, 7%. In other words, of the 144,000 Irishmen that enlisted, 104,000 deserted. And it is reliably stated that most of these desertions occurred after recognition of the Confederacy of the Pope. It is also a fact that of the 5% of Native Americans rated at deserters, 45% of the 5% were Catholics. Toledo American, as quoted on page 155 of YMI and APA. This is a sufficient proof of the charge heretofore made that a good Roman Catholic can only be loyal to the Pope and so can never be loyal to our government and to our Protestant institutions. It is true that there are some able and brave Roman Catholic officers in the Union Army who were truly loyal to the cause, as also many in the ranks who were nominally members of the Roman Catholic Church. But these were they who had educated in our free schools and had thus become so imbued with the American spirit that they were no longer good Catholics. All honor to these. Not only by desertions and resignations was Roman Catholic disloyalty made apparent, but more conspicuously by the draft riots that followed, the rioters being made up almost entirely of Irish Roman Catholics. Archbishop Hughes posed as a Union man and was so far trusted by President Lincoln that he solicited his good offices at Rome to prevent the Pope from giving recognition to the Confederate government, he being well aware of the consequences that would follow such recognition. The Archbishop proved a traitor to his trust, and the Pope's letter to Jefferson Davis followed closely on the heels of his visit to Rome. Resignations and desertions commenced. Then followed the terrible riots in New York City when a draft became necessary to fill up our depleted ranks. For 3 fearful days and nights the city was terrorized by the violence of an Irish Catholic mob, right under the shadow of the Archbishop's palace. The Archbishop kept secluded in his palace and as mute as a mouse until notified by Mr. Lincoln that he would be held personally responsible for its continuance. He then came forth, and by a few words to the rioters, whom he addressed as his friends, the mob immediately dispersed and order was restored. It only took a few words from him to accomplish what could not have been accomplished without much bloodshed, and perhaps the destruction of the city by the military arm of our government. But mark, those words were not spoken until it became necessary to the personal safety of the Archbishop. The traitor is here revealed, and now we come to the last desperate conspiracy to overthrow our government and make the rebellion a success by a resort to the favorite policy of the Jesuits, that of assassination. 1 minute, guys. I'm going to pause it just for a minute. Okay, that's what I thought. I had to pause it because I wanted to see where the chapter ends and begins and stuff. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of those old books that really did not have chapters and stuff. So I'm going to have to do like part one, part two, and stuff like that when I've had to do other older books. So I'm going to end that here. So we're going to call this part one. Let's say part one. I think that's good. And next time we will pick up part two. There's a lot in this to think about. And as I have told other people, do not rely on the internet for your information. If possible, please, please search out old books, old news articles. If you got to, go to your library, see if you can find them. Old books. I like to use New World Book. I like to use Abe books. I really like Abe books. And there's another one that I use, and I can't remember the name right now, but I buy a lot of used old books. I do not like revised, um, modern versions, I guess, where they update them. I don't like them. I don't like them, and I'm going to tell you why. Because they're trying to change history. And if they can, they can remove it from the internet or they can rewrite it. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to rewrite history. Don't go for it, man. Get old books. Used old books. That's what I like. Not cost much. They really don't. Especially there's some that they will. If you want to buy them, they've made it to where the prices are so outrageous. Like if you try to go through Amazon, let's say, or something like that. I mean, it's so outrageous. I mean, I'm talking outrageous, thousands of dollars. They do that because, the common people, they know they can't afford something like that. So that's why I went on a quest looking for used old books through like Abe books and things like that. So anyway, that's a mouthful for you. Also, what I want you to think about is this, if you would. Right now in our White House, we have a Irish Roman Catholic Jesuit as chief. Just think about that for a little. All right. Love you all so very much. Keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God in bed. Word of God upon the tablets of your hearts, so you will not sin against God or be deceived. Till next time, I'm excited. I can't wait. I love you all. Bye bye.